This RealAg Radio podcast is brought to you by Travalis Herbicide from FMC. When you need to protect cereals from a long list of the toughest in-crop weeds, Travalis Herbicide is powerful performance in one small package. You don't need to crush your back when what you really want to do is crush weeds.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147 at Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this Monday edition of the show. Hey, thanks so much, everybody, for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a big part of your workday. Also, a big shout out to everybody listening out there on the RealAg Radio podcast. Hope you had yourself a great weekend and you got everything done you needed to. Boy, we got snow in parts of Alberta and Saskatchewan. We are going to take it. No complaints. As somebody said to me, though, on Friday, I think it was Friday, worst roads that they have seen like 15 or 12 years. Like, yeah. Christy, who works at RealAg, she had said, more snow, she thinks, since last Wednesday than we've had in the last 2 years, it feels like. So, yeah, definitely feels weird, but we're definitely taking it. Hey, I want to mention tonight on the Agronomist, which is RealAg in Prime Time. It is our live streaming show. It's going to be a lot of fun tonight. Very, very important topic. They're talking starter fertilizer. So here's who they got. They've got Peter Wheat Johnson, who's going to be joining us here today on the show. They've also got Lyle Cowell from Nutrien will also be on the show. So they're talking starter fertilizer tonight, 8 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Mountain. Now, you can watch it at realagriculture.com/live, or you can find it on the Real Agriculture YouTube channel. Those are the two main ways to watch it. Also, I should point out, you can now also watch The Agronomist. They're playing replays of The Agronomist on RFD TV Canada. Okay, so in Canada, you can watch The Agronomist on RFD TV. It's not the live version. It is a replay. But check that out and check your guides and your local providers of your cable package, okay? Okay, today on the show, we are going to, like I mentioned, Peter Wheat Johnson. We've also got Paul Sinkevich from Vantage Ag and a product spotlight. And we've also got Ruoxi Xia. She is with Alberta Grains. And we're going to talk about seeding rates and tackling seed-borne diseases with seed treatment today on the program. We'll also have some time today for the top ag news stories of the day. Now, if you have any feedback, here's what you do. You call the RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. You can also find us across all the different social media platforms, or you can send me an email, and that email address is shaney@realagriculture.com. Speaking of feedback, I did hear from a number of you that listened to Friday's show. Well, there's a couple things that came up lots. One was Kelvin mentioning the Hutterite dive team, and that related to his polar plunge he did at Patura Seeds on Friday, in the afternoon. So we'll get Kelvin to fill us in on that. It's a very, very cool story about some of the volunteer activity of some Hutterite colonies in Manitoba. So there was curiosity about that. The other thing that came up lots was also the discussion about Immigration Minister Mark Miller and this idea of cutting back on temporary foreign workers, and the doubling down of Canada being addicted to TFWs, which I've got some info and an update on this in the news, but this is really bothering a lot of you. I heard about it a lot in your feedback, and just understanding what the government's trying to do, come across as dealing with a housing crisis, but at the same time, we also can't make a decision based on housing that also dramatically, potentially negatively impacts the economy. And so we got to find a nice ground. I'm with the audience. I really question how limiting TFWs is going to somehow fix or assist in providing relief on housing prices in Toronto and Vancouver and Montreal. I don't see that. Now, maybe there's somebody listening that knows a lot more about this than yours truly, but I think that's a lot of the audience is sort of scratching their head. And if anything, agriculture is going to need a carve-out, an exemption on what the government is up to here. But at this point, it just doesn't seem like that is the case, or at least we haven't got to that level of detail and some of the nuance of that. But definitely a lot of you providing your perspective that you are concerned about the government heading down this path. So we'll get an update on the news about it, and we'll see if there's more to provide. Maybe a little bit more comfort than people are having right now when it comes to this idea of limiting pretty significantly the number of TFWs and temporary workers coming to Canada. Okay, let's take a break, and when we come back, Peter W.P. Johnson's here. We'll see how his weekend was, and we're going to talk a really cool, really interesting trial. Former Real Agriculture field editor Kara Oosterhuis and her dad Gerard were out rolling snow on Friday. We're going to talk about that and if it's really an effective tactic. You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147.
If you're involved in the agriculture industry, it's important to stay informed on all the latest issues affecting your business. At RealAgriculture.com, we offer fast, reliable news, information, and insights to help you keep on top of all of the latest in Canadian agriculture. Visit RealAgriculture.com and sign up for our free daily newsletter covering everything from news, agronomy, animal agriculture, and much more. Visit RealAgriculture.com/subscribe today.
I am Lindsay Smith. Today's show, of course, brought to you by Koch Agronomic Services. And joining me now is Bryce Geisel. So what should farmers be keeping in mind about protecting nitrogen?
Well, the main thing, there are 3 forms of nitrogen loss. The key one with spring nitrogen applications is volatilization. And in order to mitigate it, we need to inhibit the specific enzymes in the soil to keep that nitrogen in the field.
So how then, though, if I want to make the best decision for the fertilizer that I've got, how do I know the level of rate or that the product that I'm using has got the right amount of stabilizer in it?
There are lots of good sources that you can kind of utilize to find that information. It's always good to talk to an agronomist, talk to the manufacturer, to your retail, and have those questions. So our products are the standard that researchers use here in Canada and are scientifically proven to work. You can find a comparison of various nitrogen stabilizers at defendyourn.ca. And there you can learn more about active ingredient rates and see how other products stack up to our agronomically effective solutions.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Agronomic Monday. Next thing you know the next thing. Next is Now is a short podcast discussing agriculture's emerging next generation tech and trends as they're happening in our industry. Next is Now, presented by GFL Ag. Learn where you get your podcasts today. Joining me like he always does on Mondays here for RealAg Radio is Peter W.P. Johnson. Hey, Pete, how's it going?
It's going awesome, thanks, Shaun. They called for a cloudy day, and the sun has been shining most of the day, so you know what Pete's like when the sun shines. He is in a good mood.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you what, we have gotten more snow in southern Alberta, I think, Pete, than we have had like the last 2 winters. It is, well, honestly, it's terrible roads, but it is glorious because, boy, I'll tell you what, we could use the moisture. This has been really great.
Yeah, absolutely. And the trick is it's spring snow, and so there's a much better chance that you'll actually be able to get that moisture into the soil as opposed to getting December snow and it going to minus 30 and all that snow sublimates away or blows away and you don't get it into the soil. So good. I'm glad we need moisture in Western Canada. That is for sure.
Yeah, it didn't snow all over Western Canada, but definitely, like in our pocket, we got it. So we are going to take it. Now, I want to talk about something really, really interesting. So Kara Oosterhuis, who was a field reporter at RealAg, she's now working with Alberta beef producers. She farms with her fiance and her parents and brother. And they were doing something really interesting. I'm curious what you think about this. So there's snow. It's a drought. And they had the land roller out, a roller you would typically use to roll peas or soybeans. They were rolling the snow. And I when I first saw this, I was like, okay, that's a super cool experiment. I'm interested in what you think about that practice. Do you think it's effective?
Yeah, and so, Shaun, I think it's a really cool experiment because the last thing you want is for that snow to blow away. And you're in southwestern Alberta, Lethbridge, that Picture Butte area, like the wind never stops in that region. So there's a pretty good chance it might blow away. Now, the other question becomes, what are the temperatures? Because if the sun shines and it gets to -2, -3 Celsius, oftentimes that sun has enough power that the snow melts a little and gets a crust on it. And once that crust is on it, then it doesn't blow away. We see that here in southwestern Ontario all the time, right? So we roll the snow so that it isn't going to blow. And do we actually gain enough for the trip over the field? It doesn't take a lot of horsepower to run over the field, and it's dry. You're not causing compaction. I'm not worried about the costs for the most part, but the big question is, would it have blown away or not? And how much stubble did you have there to trap the snow?
They said very little. So I saw Gerard said, so on that, so yeah, you're exactly right. One, they're doing this because it doesn't look like it was going to be warm enough to get a cap on that, like that harder cap from the sun. So you're doing this to get out, before the wind does, because the wind will pick up all of this snow and it will punch it into counties and over. So, but Gerard said that very little stubble, and that they're planning to put durum into this field. So, but doesn't the moisture content of the snow kind of matter here? Because I was wondering I was very curious about the pack that would be left behind. The less water content in that snow, the less of a chance you get some sort of a pack on it, right?
100%. And so how cold was it when the snow came? Was it heavy, wet snow? Was it dry, fluffy snow? And just looking at the roller, the little video that I saw on Twitter, it looked like it was fairly fluffy because the roller was pushing a nice bit of snow in front of it. And my other thought process was, how deep is that snow? Because here in Ontario, when we get snow, sometimes we get, a foot of snow or 30 centimeters, call it what you will, and trying to roll that much snow, you would just get a big snowdrift in front of the roller to the point where you probably couldn't actually pull it.
Yeah.
Just with that, but if you have 4 inches or something like that, 5 inches, and it's not wet snow, rolling it to pack it down and try to make it less prone to that wind, it may well help. Now, the other question from that is, if you only have 4 or 5 inches of snow, that's like it's about 4/10 of an inch of rain, right? It takes 10 inches of snow to equal 1 inch of rain, and so it isn't like there's a ton of moisture in that snow that you're going to save, and how much value that has. It depends on what happens after, right? Like what happens this spring. Yeah,
you know what? And let's just hope Kara left a test strip, Pete. Let's just hope that she did. We'll I'm going to check.
Shaun, come on. She worked with RealAg long enough and heard me often enough. Had to write the post for the Word, and Pete, he is all about leave the test strips. Surely I've driven that into their heads enough that they left test strips.
Yeah, cool stuff. You know what? Whether it works or it doesn't work, I appreciate the thinking outside the box, right? Like, especially when you think about the severity of the drought, and there's lots of adversity we face in this industry. There's no doubt about that. But sometimes you got to kind of do some stuff that, give it a shot. Try something that we've never done before, we don't commonly do, or maybe you saw somebody do it in some other geography. Think outside the box. I kind of like it.
Shaun, if we hadn't thought of outside the box and been open to to different ideas, we never would have tried frost seeding. And frost seeding, that whole concept, I think, was sort of what pushed Brian Barris at AAFC Lethbridge to go out and try ultra early seeding cereals in Alberta. And his data clearly shows that you should not wait for the 1st of April. If you can run on the 15th of February and you have 2 degrees Celsius soil temperature, get the wheat in the ground. So the only way you move agriculture forward is to try new things, and that means you have to think outside the box. And I love when people do, and is just leave the test strip so that once you learn something, you can tell Wheat Pete so he can tell the world, because that's exactly what I love doing.
Yeah, and you know what, you and I have kind of talked about this before, but a part of this also is exposing yourself and say your kids that want to come back to the farm to other experiences, right? Is trying to get your head out of your current situation and taking a little bit, maybe a higher viewpoint and seeing the different ways that people do things. That's what kind of kicks this into gear, I think, right?
Oh, 100%. And I start many of my presentations with a slide, and I ask the question on that slide, what are the most dangerous words in agriculture? And the answer is, we've always done it this way. And we are all creatures of habit. I get that. But man, you have to take the blinders off. And so I got Wyatt actually sent me a tweet this morning. A lucky Wyatt, he's inherited a 200-acre farm. He has no background in agriculture, and he was asking, is it worthwhile going to Ridgetown campus, University of Guelph, and taking the diploma program there? And man, every farmer really needs to have a good basic understanding of the science. And agriculture is not just science, Shaun. You and I both know this. Agriculture is an art. But the good farmers understand the art, and it's the art of applying the science. Man, if you don't know those basic scientific principles, how things work in a wheat crop in terms of, number of heads per square foot, number of seeds per head, weight of each grain, putting that together, what stresses impact that, how you can manage around that. And once you have the basic scientific principles, you can become the artist that applies those principles and becomes a great farmer. And if you never get off the farm, you just don't get exposed to enough different ideas. And I really commend farmers who send their kids to school, who send their we plan on you coming back to the farm, but for a year you need to go to work at the local co-op. I have a client right now, his daughter is going to work at the local co-op this summer. He needs her tremendously to help on the farm. It just doesn't matter, because she needs exposure to other ideas, and that's how you get that. And yeah, it's just so important.
Hey, I got a question for you. And off air, you and I were talking about how people look and interpret some trial data. And I think the example you were using was some of the Yen project. And we're always told that details matter. Okay? But we can also get bogged down in the details and paralysis by analysis and things like that. There's lots of different monikers we can use. What is some of the things that you're seeing as people interpret that kind of data and try to make improvements in their operations?
Yeah, so Shaun, we are getting so much better at generating data, and we need the data 100%. So the big kick lately, whether it's corn or soybeans or in our Yen project on winter wheat here in the Great Lakes Basin, the Great Lakes Yen project, we're doing tissue analysis now, which we've done in the past in field crops, but almost always to determine what the problem was in a problem area. So you'd see a yellow area in the field, you'd go pull a tissue sample from the yellow area, from the green area that was good, and you'd compare those. And that's how you could decide, oh, that's a manganese deficiency, or no, it's a magnesium deficiency. Now we are doing these tissue samples just as the crop grows, And I've had an example, the grower, he had really low potash at flag leaf stage, and then really low potash in the straw right at maturity. And it became a real question, like, why do I have this low potash? I've got great soil test potash, but I've heavy clay soils. But, you know, is the magnesium interfering with the potash? And you kind of start going down this rabbit hole, and you have to back up and say, okay, wait a minute. This is an issue, but can we go back and look at the whole production package and see are there holes in that production package in terms of the major management inputs that we apply on wheat, which typically nitrogen, phosphorus, fungicides, seeding date, those kind of things. And once you backed up and looked at where you were at, you saw, gosh, the nitrogen got applied too late, and it was a lower rate than probably should have been applied. I mean, you can't know that for sure because it's hindsight, but definitely the timing was late. And because of the late timing, we had low protein in the grain, low nitrogen in the plant, typically means that you're going to have lower potash because you get into this ion, I shouldn't say not an anion, but ion balance in the plant. And the other thing is that potash leaches out. So I think it had nothing to do with the magnesium. It was just a nitrogen issue. And also those tissue samples are a snapshot in time, and we don't even have historical numbers for that same snapshot in time from previous years. So they're great, but you really have to be careful interpreting them, or man, you can get off track really fast.
But hey, that's why it's important. Like a lot of times when we look at, like, say, year-over-year data, that's like 2 points in time. And that comparison may not even be relative besides the fact that you're looking at a calendar. Oh, last year in the second week of July, we had this. Well, totally different year. Like, you need to kind of look at more of the trends of that data and not just like 2 data points and saying, okay, we're either up or we're down, we're doing good, we're doing bad kind of stuff.
100%. Same with soil tests. You can get the odd time where your soil test will suddenly blip high or blip low, and you need to track it over time. And if you're going to do tissue samples, you have to track the tissue sample at the proper growth stage of the plant, because the levels of nutrients in the plant change dramatically as it goes through its life cycle. So if you look at a tissue sample from the 15th of May from last year's wheat crop and compare it to the 15th of May from this year's wheat crop, it could be 1 or 2 growth stages different, and all of a sudden that comparison isn't valid at all. So there's lots of factors, and it's great to do the data, and you can't manage what you don't measure. I totally agree with that, but boy, measure it and then apply the management or the data analysis carefully until, as you say, you get multiple years and you're clear on what that data is telling you.
Yeah, good points. Hey, Pete, have yourself a great week. Stay out of trouble, which I know you always struggle with, but all the best to you, okay? Thanks a lot for joining us here today on the show.
Super. Thanks for having me, Shaun. We'll talk to you again soon.
You can think I'm joking. He has a hard time. Pete's always in trouble, and I love it. That's one of my favorite parts about him. Hey, Vantage is partnering with Canadian farmers for outstanding emergence. Their line of tillage, seeding, and planting equipment offers solutions for all soil types, field conditions, and tillage practices, helping you to maximize yield. To learn more and find your local dealer, visit Vantage.com. We'll be right back on RealAg Radio with the Product Spotlight with Vantage Ag right after this.
Before you get back in the field this year, spend some time with the Corn School on RealAgriculture.com. Get all the information you need on hybrid selection, planting depth, crop inputs, and more from a wide range of industry experts. A massive library of video content is available on demand when you need it most. Spend your time outside of the field, inside the classroom, with the Corn School on RealAgriculture.com.
The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is your one-stop shop for everything a canola grower needs. Check out our free video series on YouTube for all the latest in canola agronomy, research, marketing, and more. Don't have time to watch? Download the podcast version of the Canola School on RealAgriculture.com or anywhere you download your podcasts. Stay on top of all things canola with the Canola School on RealAgriculture.com, brought to you by BASF and Invigor Hybrid Canola.
Peter Johnson at Wheat Pete, RealAgriculture.com, and what an opportunity! Oh my gosh! You think you can't grow better wheat? You are absolutely wrong. We're going to show you how to strive for those record wheat yields that they get in the UK and in New Zealand. You can grow 150 bushel wheat. I'll show you how.
Catch Wheat Pete's Word every Wednesday on RealAgriculture.com or download the podcast on iTunes or Spotify.
To Real Ag Radio. I am Lindsay Smith, and it's time for today's Product Spotlight. Joining me is Paul Sinkevich. He's with Vantage Ag. Paul, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Lindsay. Nice to see some snow on the prairies.
We love it. We need it. So come on down. Okay, let's talk fertilizer products. Just quickly, for those who may not be aware, who is Vantage Ag? What do you offer?
Vantage Ag, we're a relatively new company. We've been around for a couple of years. We just actually had our second year anniversary a few days ago.
Nice.
We are launching some new fertilizer technology globally that we believe will change the fertilizer business. What we offer is a liquid of all the nutrients, a particle size that's only 30 to 40 times bigger than an atom. And so what we're able to do is apply this liquid technology to any plants at any time throughout the growing season. And now we can get way more of each of those nutrients in the plant than we ever thought was even possible. So it's pretty cool stuff, and it will change the way that farmers look at their fertility strategies.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so super cool, very exciting technology. The key for any new product, of course, is how you use it, how you get the most out of it. What do growers need to know about the timing and the application timing for these products? What's so key here?
Well, one of the major advantages of using this new fertilizer technology is that now growers can take advantage of one of the 4 R's of nutrient stewardship, the right time. This new technology allows growers to assess and make decisions based on soil nutrient supply and plant demand throughout the entire growing season, not just at seeding time. So, for example, sulfur needs in canola really start to increase 3 to 4 weeks after emergence. What a grower planned for at seeding time and what is actually happening a month later might be very different. This means that if S is in short supply later in the growing season, we now have the technology that can eliminate this potential limiting factor. Another example might be early season phosphate uptake. If soils are cool and wet early, the plants may be slow to emerge because of a lack of phosphate. Again, we now have the technology to quickly and efficiently apply phosphate to speed up plant growth with a good supply of P to those struggling plants. There are many other examples where in the past there wasn't much we could do depending upon the nutrient. But with this new technology, we can address any nutrient deficiency at any time throughout the growing season.
Okay, so certainly could take advantage as well of improving moisture conditions, as we talked about, maybe, which wouldn't that be a great thing to be able to do? Now, so these are foliar products. They're going to go through a sprayer. Whenever we're going to use a sprayer, we need to know, water volumes. Are there specific mixing instructions? Are there special nozzles we need? What do farmers need to know about the actual application?
Well, what we've learned over the years with this technology is that it's all about good coverage. We do recommend 10 gallons of water per acre. No special nozzles are required. We also have a very specific recommendation when mixing with any pesticides. And this is kind of industry standards. You fill your sprayer tank half full with water, agitate, add your chem, continue to agitate and fill, and then when near the top, slowly pour in the liquid fertilizer. And again, that's kind of a standard industry procedure. We've tested many different products with our fertilizers and have yet to find a product that can't be mixed. We continue to test And our new website will have this information available soon. And we always say, when in doubt, we always suggest a jar test to ensure mixability. There are also other products on the market that can assist in tank mix compatibility. We handle one compatibility agent called Convert. These products can fix mixing problems and prevent them.
Okay. Now, whenever we're applying something, there can be a concern about, leaf burn or anything like that. Should we be concerned about that? Is there anything that we need to know ahead of time that we could maybe head off a problem before it even begins?
We have tested all of our new products on tomatoes at multiple times the rate. We do this to ensure plant safety. Even at multiple times the rate, we do not injure tomatoes, which are the most sensitive plant to phototoxicity. The reason is that this new technology does not sit on the leaf surface like old technology. It's quickly absorbed and metabolized and used by the plant, making it very plant safe. I'll give you an example of a visual. If you take a large boardroom table and cover it with those large exercise balls, this is an example of the current foliar technology. Inefficient, small absorption points, large chunks of nutrients sitting on the leaf surface, that can cause burn. Now remove those large exercise balls off the table and cover that table with marbles. Now we have a particle size that's at least 500 times smaller, much more efficient, less nutrient required, faster absorption, and very plant safe. Now, this is an example of how our new technology compares to existing products in the marketplace.
All right. So, Paul, you did mention a website with more information. Where can farmers go? Who can they call potentially to get more information about what Vantage Ag has to offer?
Vantage.ag is our new site that we'll be launching here shortly in the next couple of weeks. They can also call Vantage Ag at 778-919-3370.
All right. Paul, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Thank you, Lindsay. Take care.
All right. We'll be back with more RealAg Radio right after this.
What's next for your fields? At Pioneer, delivering industry-leading genetics drives everything we do. From the scientists in the lab to our local teams with boots on the ground, we are determined to get there first. Developing top-performing products, proven in more growing conditions than ever before. Pioneer. What's next happens here. Visit pioneer.com/Canada to learn more.
Hi, I'm Bernard Tobin, host of the Soybean School on RealAgriculture.com. Throughout the year, on the Soybean School, we'll bring you timely agronomic video content from planting to harvest, from the latest agronomic research to the latest in production technology. Check out our massive video library on YouTube, RealAgriculture.com, or download the audio podcast versions wherever you get your podcasts. The Soybean School is brought to you by BASF and Syngenta Canada.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio. This segment is brought to you by the Wheat School, which is sponsored by Syngenta Canada, C&M Seeds, and Alberta Grain. Make sure you go to wheatschool.com, where you can also find our episodes at the Real Agriculture YouTube channel. And we're joined right now here on RealAg Radio on Agronomic Monday by, well, you know what? Usually we have Jeremy Boychin from Alberta Grains on here, but we've got a great pinch hitter, so to speak. We're joined by Alberta Grains Agronomy Extension Specialist. It is Ruoxi Xia. Rosie, great to meet you.
Thanks for having me.
Great. Okay. Now, from an agronomic standpoint, we got some snow last week, and more so in the wet form, which I think is really, really going to have growers feeling a little bit better about their moisture situation, but it doesn't exactly solve all of our problems.
It definitely provides some relief. So generally, farmers can count out 20 to 50% of the moisture from the snowmelt to enter the soil and help in your growing season. And about 50% the snowmelt will run off or evaporate when the soil surfaces are dry, and about 80% will lose if the soil surfaces are wet. And if, say, for the areas that get maybe 30 centimeters of snow, then there's about a 10-to-1 ratio between snow depth and rainfall equivalent. So 25 centimeters of snow equals 2.5 centimeter or 1 inch of rain. And if 50% of that is lost to runoff or evaporation, the snowfall contributes around half an inch of soil moisture. So it does help, but we definitely need more moisture for this upcoming growing season. But at least we got some good snow.
Absolutely. I agree. Okay, so now the calendar tells us we are getting closer to seeding and planting time. Now, it is critical across really all crops, not just the ones that Alberta Grains works in with wheat and barley, but that seeding rate and getting that proper plant establishment is really, really the key to get us off to a really good start. So let's talk about some of the considerations.
Yeah, sure. For seeding rate, the top consideration is to look at ultimately your target plant stand. So for wheat, the optimum range is somewhere between 22 to 28 plants per square foot, and for barley, it's somewhere between 20 to 25 plants per square feet. To achieve this plant stand, you want to consider a couple of factors. One is your emergence rate. That is when you send your seed to be tested by the seed lab, they can get you the emergence rate. And the other important factor to count out is the emergence mortality. That is, among the seeds that are live, how much of them can actually emerge and become established plants. So Alberta Grains has a good seeding rate calculator to help you sort out this question. And it's just on our website, and you can try the seeding rate calculator out. And we also have a table listing out the optimum seeding rate for each crop, including spring wheat and barley and durum wheat, and also if you're planting solid, if you're planting solid stem varieties, you want to set slightly lower seeding rate for it to get a good stem development. So going back to the emergence mortality rate, it is crucial because it can vary between farm and farm and vary between year to year. So if you really want to reach your target plant stand, definitely go out and do plant counts about 3 weeks after seeding. That way you have a good idea of how much of the plants make it to how many of the plants become established among the seeds you put in. That way you can do better math and get a more and use a more accurate seeding rate for your farm.
So how do I know what mortality rate to use? Is there just some common rules of thumb to follow, or what do I do there?
In harvest fields, it's common to see somewhere between 10 to 20%, but it can vary a lot. Say we've seen in the small plot research that their emergence mortality is a lot lower than what farmers are seeing. So it definitely depends on, say, the seeding equipment you're using or the seeding depth or a lot of factors. So the general range is like 10 to 20%, but definitely go out, do your own plant counts and figure out the emergence mortality or the plant survival rate for your own farm, and do that through a few years so you have a better idea of how it generally goes across different conditions and years.
Now, I know you've been getting some questions about true loose smut seed infection in barley versus fusarium seed infection in wheat. So talk about comparing those two diseases across the two crops.
Yeah, actually we got a question through our website. Agronomist was asking a farmer has basically two options of seed sources. One is a barley seed that has 15% Chilus smut infection. The other one is wheat that has 2% fusarium infection. So the question was, would either of the seed source be recommended, or should the farmer look for seeds from other sources? So if we look at these options one by one, for the Chilus smut, 50% infection is actually pretty high. Generally, certified seeds have 2 to 4% of Chilus smut infection, and because the pathogen grows in the embryo, so if without any management, 16% Chilus smut seed infection can cause 15% infected plants, and eventually about 15% yield loss, and that's a considerable amount. So to deal with that, seed treatment is the best option, but they do not eliminate all of the Chilus smut. Generally, the chemical companies claim 80% control with their products, but the pathologists are saying the product choice of products and the coverage is very important. So do choose a systemic seed treatment that says control, not suppression, of Chilus smut in the label, and find somewhere that can ensure a uniform coverage of during the seed treatment to get the most efficacy. And if the farmer do really want to use the seed source, one of the ways to figure out the actual percentage of control is to send a seed sample to the chemical company or to the seed labs. They can grow the seed out with the seed treatment to see how much reduction can actually happen with that seed treatment. Then for the wheat seed that has 2% fusarium infection, the first thing you want to look at is which area you are at, or what's the risk of introducing fusarium through the infected seed. So if Fusarium, Graminearum, or FG has not been found in your region or in your field, then the risk of introducing it through the seed is high. In this case, the producer is highly recommended to use a fusarium-free seed and find other sources. But the inoculum load is already high in the region. That is, if FG has been reported in over 20% of the field in the region on an annual basis, then you can say it's pretty established there already. Then the focus shifts from how to keep FG out of my field to how do I actively manage FG in my field. So if that's the situation you are facing, then from the seed germination and then establishment step, from the seed germination and then establishment standpoint, the risk of a 2% fusarium infection is limited. So issues usually occur with emergence when you have over 10% of FG infection. However, do test the germination rate of the seed lot. This is crucial. And if the germination is 95% or higher, then you can use the seed with the seed treatment recommended. However, if the germination rate is well below 90%, then a seed treatment are not likely to bring the germination back to 90%. So in that case, it's recommended to source other seed lots. So this question came in as a very good example of how to analyze the local conditions and the seed sources available and make decisions based on the end use of the grain and make decisions based on the end use of grain, the germination rate of the seed, and what seed treatment facilities you have around your area.
Great stuff. Rosie, thanks so much for joining us here today on Agronomic Monday. Really, really appreciate it, and hopefully chat again soon.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.
We'll be right back here on RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147 at Sirius XM, right after this quick break. Get all the information you need to keep your pulse crop healthy and profitable with the Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com. The Pulse School is a free YouTube video series covering agronomy, research, and more across a host of different pulse crops. It's also available as an audio podcast wherever you download or stream your favorite podcast. Check us out on YouTube or visit RealAgriculture.com. The Pulse School, brought to you by BSF Canada.
I'm Lindsay Smith from RealAgriculture.com. Join me Monday nights for The Agronomist, a 1-hour live and interactive show broadcast across YouTube, Facebook, and X. Monday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, I host expert agronomists from all over the country to give you answers to some of the toughest agronomic questions. Join us live or catch the replay Tuesday morning. That's The Agronomist with me, Lindsay Smith, Monday nights live at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Welcome back to Real Ag Radio here on this Monday. It's now time for the top ag news stories of the day, brought to you by M&P. The deadline to sign up for AgriStability is April 30th, okay? Thanks to a recent program change, AgriStability coverage levels have improved significantly for 2024. To gain a better understanding of how AgriStability and other programs can improve your farm's risk management plan, visit mnp.ca. Let's get into the top ag news stories of the day here on this Monday. The Grain Act review is, seems quite stalled out, to be honest with you, but some farm groups in Saskatchewan taking matters into their own hands, I guess. Consultations have been done on the Grain Act review, and the government has put out their What We Heard document. But on Tuesday, March 26th, industry participants, government, and farmers are getting together to talk about exactly that, says Ian Boxall, president of APAS, one of the organizers of the Grain Act Summit. Also, Sask-Wheat Development Commission also involved. Regardless of when the actual Grain Act review happens, Boxall says there are some issues that can be addressed now. Of particular importance to APAS is the topic of outward inspections by the CGC, a key part of Canada's grain industry global reputation. At issue is the cost of the inspections, the role of the CGC, and funding of the inspections. Boxall says that he's hoping attendees of the summit can reach some consensus on what changes be prioritized ahead of a new chief commissioner being appointed to the Canadian Grain Commission following Doug Chorney's retirement next month. And maybe spark, and I know the federal government's been invited to this. I did an interview with Ian, you can find it at RealAgriculture.com. But maybe spark some political will to move this forward. Otherwise, we're getting to the point where maybe we're so far past what we heard that we kind of start over again. And there's also an election that's going to happen at some time here. So, yeah, it just doesn't feel like this is something that really is going to get dealt with in really quick time. But really cool. We'll have to see what comes out of the summit happening tomorrow, Tuesday. A large majority of French senators on Thursday voted against the ratification of a free trade deal between the European Union and Canada, dubbed CETA, in a closely watched ballot after farmers slammed Liberal trade policies in weeks of protests. A majority of 211 senators opposed the ratification of the free trade deal, while 44 voted in favor. Free trade deals, a symbol of the EU's will to open up markets and boost competition, have become the target of fierce criticism across the political spectrum since Europe-wide farmer protests highlighted what they have called unfair competition from abroad. This is what I've been talking about, is that a lot of times the farmer protests have been sort of labeled as being farmers fighting back against environmental policies. And in some countries that is true. But in countries like France, it has been about free trade. And farmers not wanting it, trying to push the government to become more protectionist. Okay? So people have kind of hijacked the farmer protests and made them all about one thing that they are all not about, has been something I've been telling audiences through my speeches here through the winter. But, yeah, so France saying no to CETA at this late date. Interbev, the lobby of French cattle farmers and meat processors, welcomed the vote. The federal government's move to restrict the number of temporary residents in Canada will cool demand in the beleaguered housing sector and help in the battle against inflation, according to some economists. So remember when I said maybe somebody knows more about this than I do? Well, some economists are kind of agreeing with what the federal government's doing here. So on Thursday, Ottawa announced that it will reduce the share of temporary residents to 5% of the total population from 6.2% over the next 3 years. This means the volume of temporary residents will drop by roughly 20% from the current 2.5 million, although the plan will be finalized by the fall, Immigration Minister Mark Miller said. While the government sets annual targets for the admission of permanent residents, it has not previously done so by the category of temporary residents, although earlier this year, Ottawa announced a 2-year cap on the issuance of visas to international students. Goldman Sachs forecasts that commodities will see a boost from anticipated interest rate cuts in 24, aiding industrial and consumer demand, according to a story from the Wall Street Journal. Analysts predict a potential 15% return on raw materials throughout the year as borrowing costs increase, manufacturing rebounds, and geopolitical uncertainties linger. The bank specifically mentions copper, aluminum, gold, and oil products as likely to experience price increases. However, Goldman Sachs emphasizes the importance of selective investment, cautioning that gains in commodities won't be across the board. I've noticed they did not mention corn, soybeans, canola, or wheat. They're thinking some more of the energies, and man, let's hope that if we see a rally in some of those other commodities, agricultural commodities, kind of catch a wave of it. That would be really, really helpful. Let's be honest. Speaking of agricultural commodities, beef and pork, wholesale beef prices drop. Wholesale beef prices fell $3.01 for choice and $2.26 for select on Friday, while movement totaled only 85 loads. That could signal a potential short-term top following the run of strong price gains and movement as retailers geared up for the upcoming grilling season. Now, on the hog front, Cash hog index continues to firm. Pork and movement slows. The CME lean hog index is up a nickel to $83.59 as of March 21st. Extending the seasonal climb since the beginning of the year, the pork cutout value firmed $1.30 on Friday through movement. Although movement was to 232.1 loads and failed to clear 300 loads on any of the days last week, signaling slower retailer demand. Chick-fil-A is reversing its 2014 commitment to use only antibiotic-free chicken and now will allow some antibiotics in its chicken starting in the spring of 2024. The restaurant chain announced the shift from no antibiotics ever to no antibiotics important to human medicine on its website. Antibiotics will be used on the chickens only if they are surrounding animals only if they or surrounding animals become sick and the antibiotics used are not intended for human consumption. So basically, moving back to reality, our cost of goods is getting too high. We can't source this number of chickens, so we're going backwards. Business decision, alert, alert, alert. Yeah, well, not. And who is? Are you really surprised? Is it a real shocker? No, because companies want to keep their costs low, and some of the procurement of some of these crazy labels is just out of sight, right? It's out of sight. Also, yogurt heist highlights cyber gangs targeting of U.S. goods. A concerning incident cited in the Wall Street Journal involved a yogurt heist, shedding the light on a growing trend of cyber gangs targeting U.S. goods. The item details that Ralph Hoffman, a business owner, received a troubling email last year indicating that thieves had intercepted a shipment of approximately $50,000 worth of yogurt and plant-based milk destined for Florida. The perpetrators demanded a ransom of $40,000, posing a significant threat to Hoffman's business. The scheme, termed as double brokering, represents a surge in fraudulent activities that are causing distress among freight movers throughout the United States. If you have any feedback on today's show, send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. Thank you so much, everybody, for getting real and getting connected with RealAg Radio. Talk to you again tomorrow. Cheers, everybody.
Thank you for downloading this RealAg Radio podcast, brought to you by Travalis Herbicide from FMC. When you need to protect cereals from a long list of the toughest in-crop weeds, Travalis Herbicide is a powerful performance in one small package. You don't need to crush your back when really what you want to do is crush weeds.